Hi, my name is Chuck Vandenberg. I am a high school English teacher at a local public high school here in the Rochester area. Today I'm going to talk to you about No Time Like the Future, An Optimist Considers Mortality by Michael J. Fox. You've probably heard of him from his film career, which has seemed to span my lifetime. He seems to have been around forever. When I was a kid, I was watching him on Family Ties. We probably remember the Back to the Future movies, and he's stayed active in acting ever since, up until recently. And that recently is due to his suffering from Parkinson's, which he's been doing since age 29, which is 30 years now. So he has had plenty of experience with the disease. He has founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which has become the largest nonprofit funder of Parkinson's research in the world. As a person diagnosed with Parkinson's, I was a little leery to read a detailed book about someone else's experience. They call it the snowflake disease because everyone has a different manifestation. And sometimes I feel like I just want to worry about my own experience with this and hope that I don't look into really bad corners and worry a lot about what might happen to me and just take what does. But that fear was unnecessary for this book. We don't get scared. We don't get terrible images of Michael J. Fox. We do get an accident where he goes into the details of breaking his arm, but you will encounter a happy person living a rich life. So don't fear that if you ever thought of my concerns I just mentioned there. I'm going to go through what I hope is a fairly brief summary, and then I'll share some thoughts on style and effect and purpose. I would assume there are two camps for people that would want to read the book: Michael J. Fox fans and people that have Parkinson's or another debilitating disease, maybe caretakers of those people. And if you're not a Michael J. Fox fan and you read the book, you'll probably become one. He comes across as a really good man doing good work in the world, a good father, a good husband. Of course, he's writing his own book, but I trust that, he's a very honest and insightful person, and I trust that he's telling it like it is. You get an intimate look at his struggles, and he's open about them. Early on, for example, in his marriage, his alcoholism was causing troubles, and he took care of that, and apparently has lived with his wife for many decades, and they have a happy marriage and a wonderful family of kids. He's a smart and funny, compassionate guy, driven, obviously, magnanimous. You just got to love this guy. His wife says love is giving someone the benefit of the doubt. I think if you read the book, you'll give him the benefit of the doubt, as I do after reading. The introduction ends with him face down after his accident, and then we kind of flash back throughout the book to see how he got to where he is there. And then we go beyond that, of course. Chapter 1 is about the man and his family, and it's just a sweet chapter. And you'll probably relate, if you're a parent, you'll probably relate. John Irving once said that the purpose of the first chapter is to make the reader want to read the second chapter, etc. And that is certainly the case with chapter 1 from Fox. The main thing here, he's a loving parent who grieves as his children leave, even as they leave towards success. And there's that paradox that parents hopefully face if things go nicely. So as a reader, I felt a kinship with him on that regard. The next few chapters are glimpses into his life. One's about his love of dogs and his dog. We see his career. If you're interested in acting and you're interested in his acting, you get some behind-the-scene details there. He turns his detriment into an asset. He works the Parkinson's issues into some of the characters successfully. We see travel. We see him go into a country called Bhutan in the Himalayas. I had not heard of it. But it sounds like a great place. They have a national happiness metric, and they even have a secretary of gross national happiness. Fascinating concept. It's a place where his symptoms disappear. He comes home and they return, but that's an interesting angle. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We see him on golf outings with friends, some of whom we've heard of, George Stephanopoulos, for example. We see him watching fireworks with Keith Richards. We don't see Stephanopoulos and Richards hanging out with him at the same time. I've always liked those Keith Richards jokes, like, we've got to start thinking about the kind of world we're going to leave behind for Keith Richards. Fox comes up with his own Keith Richards joke, which is, I feel worse than Keith Richards looks. That Keith Richards moment is from a chapter called Exile on Payne Street, which is a turning point in the book. We start to see his vulnerability. We get a detailed account of the preparation that goes into his 350-step journey to work each day. He compares that with his younger hockey and lacrosse playing self. He's from Canada, and he notes the distance from that point to where he is now. Then we learn about his spinal tumor, which apparently is really rare. It's unrelated to Parkinson's, but he gets this other fluke thing. He says something to his doctor like, well, at least it isn't brain surgery. And the doctor says, right, it's way worse. It's a very risky surgery. He has to take it. He's already losing mobility to Parkinson's. Now this other thing is going to threaten his mobility even worse, so he has to take care of that. He gets through it. He has wonderful doctors working for him. We see him throughout the recovery process. But he gets overconfident at some point, at least that's what he says about himself, and he lets his daughter go on about her business. No, it's okay, I've got this. And then he walks down the hall and falls, and he shatters his arm really drastically. And of course, this is post-spinal surgery, so he's worried that he might have damaged that incision point or that work that was done on his spine. The arm thing is a place for him to make interesting observation about Parkinson's. With a broken arm, he can show everybody his terrible X-ray, and they can go, oh, wow. But with Parkinson's, we can't do that. We just tell people how we're feeling, or they see a tremor, or they hear the voice softening, or what have you. But this arm moment is this catalyst for him to move in a different direction. He starts to get down on himself. He says, I've paid so much attention to my body, I haven't paid that much attention to my mind. So he kind of dives into fear and the driving force that fear can be. He jumps back to a trip to Africa where he talks about seeing a leopard in a tree and realizing that the leopard could attack very quickly and drag one of them away. So he makes a metaphor for fear. 1, the leopard in the tree, a real danger. 2, a leopard that you intuitively know is around somewhere because of the environment. And 3, the invisible leopard stealing toward all of us, which is mortality. He calls it our individual expiration date. And that's the ultimate fear that the book sets out to consider. We go back home from that trip and we see some of his cognitive failures. He mixes up his daughter's names. He feels bad about that. And I think that might be, the leopard is something that will eventually get your body, but your mind too it too has that shelf life that he talks about. The book ends with the ending of his really bad year and things slowly returning to normal. And a nice little symbol at the end. He's got a tattoo of a battered sea turtle. When he was in the Virgin Islands, he swam with or met this sea turtle that was scarred from, propellers or attacks from other animals. But the turtle keeps on swimming, and Michael J. Fox keeps on doing what he does too. So, as far as commentary about the style of the writing, I would say his strong suit is his connection to the reader. Probably the chief way he does that is making constant cultural references. I mentioned Exile on Pain Street, which is a change from Exile on Main Street, a Rolling Stones album. So sometimes he makes a change like that, which is a little bit like a pun, but often he'll just name a chapter, or Slip Sliding Away, or Risky Business, or Whack-A-Mole, or he'll just borrow something we all know. And if you like Michael J. Fox, or if you have Parkinson's, you're probably at a certain age, and if you're at that age, you're probably going to sense you're probably going to know all these references, and you're going to feel, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I'm experiencing this thing with a movie star. I'm connecting to a movie star. I'm getting an inside joke with a movie star. So that's kind of cool. He's a total success with connecting to his audience. You also feel right there with him because of his present tense setup. With the flashback, he can jump back and then kind of walk you through everything in the present tense format. He's very playful with his words. He does some punning. But he can also be really serious about his language, sometimes even poetic. He definitely cares about the way he expresses himself. Sometimes when I'm talking about literature with kids, I say, let's look at one passage and see if we can see the whole book in there. That's a high bar, but sometimes it works. I want to give you one passage that I think is sort of a high point for him. You don't see the whole book necessarily, but it's a high point. So he's coming back from that surgery I mentioned on his spine, and he's about to take a shower, and he says this: within the glass and marble shower enclosure are more grip bars, and gleaming under the overhead light a chrome and plastic chair, a sadly appropriate throne for a damaged king returning from battle. That to me is a great image. You can picture it, of course. It's clear and striking. It's honest, and it exposes the man, right? He's about to take a shower, so the man is going to be literally naked, but he's also figuratively naked in the sense that he is broken down. He's a movie star. You're not supposed to see those guys failing and being damaged and all that. So it's very specific to Fox in the sense that in a way, he's a king, right? He's fallen from the height. He's got the riches and he's got the fame, but he's gonna take a shower like a broken down king on this chair. But for the rest of us, it can be sort of universal too, because hopefully we've all had high points in our lives where we felt strong. And if we're suffering from Parkinson's or another disease like that, or we're just feeling really old, we used to be a king or a queen. We had something back there, and now we might be on a chair like that in the shower. So I really think that's a nice little move that he makes. There are among many others. That's just an example. A page or so later, he tries to keep the humor rolling, of course. He has the section called Asses and Elbows, where he talks about being in a wheelchair. And I've never been in one, and I never really thought about this, but I guess that's the level you're at, that elbow level. He makes the insightful observation that when you're in that wheelchair going through an airport, you feel like a piece of luggage. I thought, oof, yeah, that's probably about how you feel. You're just being toted along to get through the place. Maybe those earlier glamorous trips with famous people are a way of showing the height from which he fell to get to this broken down king in the shower. But he doesn't really, it's not a tragedy. He's not tragic about his life. He maintains his optimism. So he shows you all those lows, but more often than not, he's funny. Much more often, he's funny. I think that shower description is a high point. Depending on your tastes, a low point might be this. Back in the days of carefree ambling, I would have considered the topic of walking to be rather pedestrian. Somewhere in between the shower and that would be, as I will find out, a broken humorist is no blankety-blank joke. Blankety-blank is edited for the library patrons. And just a touch of his philosophy. I guess I answered the eternal question. If Mike fell in the kitchen and no one was there to see him, would he still break his arm? So he's constantly working with you to try to keep you amused and keep you with him and, making his jokes. Irony is a favorite device of his. One of his chapters starts with this sentence: I love my mother too much to give her a hug. She's in her 90s, I believe. She's obviously therefore old and frail, and he's a guy that doesn't always have control of his body, and he can't therefore get too close to her. That sentence is a great Michael J. Fox sentence. It's a mix of irony, care, and family closeness. I got to read one other one I would like to read to you as well, which is very Michael J. Fox. He's talking about his son, Sam. I showed Sam how to tie his shoes using the rabbit method. One ear goes up, the other lace lassos that ear, slips under the loop, and becomes the second ear. I taught him how to ride a bike, gently pushing from behind as he found the confidence to press the pedals and gather speed. Now, on occasion, Sam pushes me in a wheelchair. On my end, no pedaling is required. When I rise carefully from the chair, my son often checks my laces before I take a step, and he's quick to tie them for me if needed. So there's the irony, there's that human family touch that he has and the care that he has for his kids and just his ever-present eye, watching what's happening and interpreting it. Sometimes he misses the mark a bit, in my opinion. For example, when he goes to Bhutan, he sees this particularly awe-inspiring landscape, and he says this: what I see overwhelms me. It's so beautiful as to be impossible. Every turn of the head presents a new tableau, etc. The landscape exists to be painted by a master. He's definitely effusive and enthusiastic, but the landscape doesn't exist to be painted by the master. It's probably the other way around, or the master might think so. A couple paragraphs later, he's on to jokes about the culture's focus on the male organ. He can't resisting dubbing one of the sculptures penis portraiture. So he has a few other ones of those too. So whatever his topic, you sense that he's working really hard to share everything that he enjoys with you. and you just gotta love this guy. So that's the kind of writing: careful, effusive, funny, insightful, honest, personal. But what is he actually saying with this book? What are the points? Normally I look at that way with nonfiction. This, of course, is written by a celebrity, and so he has a fan base, and so they might not be concerned about that kind of thing, and they might just be looking at it going, well, if he can bear all that, I can bear my weight, what I have to bear. But in terms of other arguments or the purpose of the book, for sure he shows that family is a source of meaning and happiness. Like the quote I just read. Here's another one. I've come to accept that I take a village. I am part of a village too. I contribute in every way I can, and I try to be a solid citizen. I feel fortunate to be here in this place with these people that I love. So he gets a lot of happiness from his family. We probably all do. And he gives back, and he feels a part of a community, not just this drain on the community. And I guess the point there is we should all try to do so. His Bhutan story strongly suggests that there's an environmental link to Parkinson's in the way that an environment can make a person feel better or lose one's symptoms. He doesn't mention, although I've read elsewhere, that there is the opposite direction where the environment causes Parkinson's. So there are chemicals that are increasing as societies in the world industrialize, and as those chemicals increase, so do cases of Parkinson's. But that's outside the book, further research if you're interested. He makes the old argument, which is it could always be worse. He talks about how things could be worse. He's gone through obviously bad things, but he mentions the loss of a child, loss of liberty, exile from one's country. These are things that could be worse than what he goes through. I think he makes the case, or at least acknowledges, that our attitudes can color our perception. He says, quote, in telling other patients, chin up, it'll be okay. Did I look to them to validate my optimism? So he gets to a point where he's sort of questioning himself. This is in that back half of the book that I mentioned. He doesn't say specifically that his confrontation with mortality attacked his or weakened his self-confidence, but you sense that sort of. He says, quote, over the coming months I will feel a shift in my worldview and struggle to believe in ideas that I have espoused for years. And I think that is because he's looking at death and going, this is coming my way. He makes the argument that fear can be irrational and debilitating. We saw that with the leopard thing. In my mind, a weak point would be, how do we overcome that? How do we confront the fear of mortality? How do we move beyond it? One of my favorite quotes, probably my favorite quote from the book, comes from his father-in-law, who says, with gratitude, optimism becomes sustainable. I actually believe that. It's taken me a long time to get there, but I think that's a great mantra. Fox seems to be born with gratitude, and I'd like to know where that comes from, or can it be cultivated? My great-grandmother didn't have a quote like that. Her quote was, the first 100 years are the hardest. So was she wise? Was his grandmother wise? Did he have something to say? Did it matter in the end to two adults our age? I'm not sure. But if you want to find out how to cultivate gratitude, you'd have to go probably to, clinical psychologists, philosophers, or maybe anthropologists. So Fox keeps his optimism. It's called, the subtitle, An Optimist Considers Mortality. But I guess I'd like to know how. In the face of mortality, how does one become an optimist? Can one become an optimist? I thought of Tigger. There are Tiggers out there, and there are Eeyores out there, and there are all points in between. And the wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tigger's a wonderful thing, which is circular. And if you're outside the circle, how do you get in? How do you become the Tigger? So in terms of that optimist considers mortality subtitle, that's true in a sense, but I guess I was thinking confronts mortality. Like, I'd like to see the confrontation. He confronts it in a way, or at least he considers it. He ends up doing okay with it, and I'm happy for him. But I don't put the book down feeling like I've learned more about getting on that path of maintaining optimism in the face of mortality. So in the end, it's a funny book. It's fun. It's thoughtful. It's honest, I think. and it's by a fundamentally good man. He's an exemplary family man. He's exemplary as a philanthropist. I think his attitudes are worthy of emulation. His 30-year battle with Parkinson's is extraordinary, and it's inspiring. I wish him well as he continues to fight that fight and to do good in the world. I hope I can face Parkinson's with the kind of grace and strength that he seems to have done. And I hope that you can face whatever challenges that you're facing with this kind of strength and grace, even that last leopard that he mentions.